definitely start journaling right off the bat. Start logging everything, log your feelings, log what's happening, at that time, log anything and everything, the time and the date and what's being said to you. Because if you are in a manipulative relationship, a good chance is that you're being gaslit, meaning that your reality is being twisted. So you want to document things right away, because later on you're going to be told that didn't happen or that you're crazy.
I am Gloria Grace Rand, founder of the L.O.V.E. Method and author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Live, Love, Engage: How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. In this podcast, we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective on how to live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically, so you can create a life and business with more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Live, Love, Engage. Namaste. Imagine breaking free from a toxic relationship to discover a version of yourself that won't be manipulated and is even stronger than before. Well, today's guest is going to be shedding light on how to heal from narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships so you can return to your truest self. But first, I do want to welcome you to Live, Love, Engage. If this is your first time, I am Gloria Grace, founder of Align to Shine Academy, and I work with spiritually minded women, entrepreneurs, to helping them to break free from self-doubt so you can step into your highest potential. And joining us in just a moment is Deborah Ashway, and she is a licensed counselor and owner of a mental health services practice. She is certified in EMDR and trained in expressive arts, and meaning that she actually treats the root cause of most mental issues. And she also is a podcaster as well. She hosts a podcast called Healing from Toxic Abuse, and which I was pleased to be a guest on. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her up here and welcome you, Deborah, officially to Live, Love, Engage.
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much for having me, and for Grace, actually, and for letting me be on your show.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Hey, that's what we do, right? We like to support one another, and really, especially with the messages, that we have to share. And I think it's important to help people thrive, well, as I say at the end of the show, live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically. And sometimes they need some help in doing that. And I know sometimes it might be that they are experiencing things like toxic abuse, or and maybe they're not sure that they are, and maybe thinking that it's just a normal relationship challenge. So I thought we'd start with maybe if you could shed some light on what would be some subtle red flags that maybe people don't realize, like I think I might have experienced in my life, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, but I would start with the self. I would always just kind of start with your own body reactions, your own intuition. And if you think that, look into it a little bit further. If you're thinking that your relationship might be toxic, I mean, start there, and then go through what you're experiencing. Start to narrate your reality a little bit. Like, are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling confused? Are you feeling forgetful? These kind of are all signs that the body is experiencing something that's not in a line necessarily with your truest self. Because when we're our truest selves, we don't necessarily feel all that. The nervous system isn't as engaged. So we want to be in a state of calm. And if we're not consistently start looking around in your environment.
Yeah, that's so important because it really, our bodies are such wonderful tools that they really can help us to signal what's going on in our life if we just start paying attention to it. So it's, yeah, I like that. And as you were talking, I'm almost started thinking about um, other relationships, like that we have, maybe friends and who maybe sometimes see things that we don't see. Can you talk a little bit about that? And because I know sometimes we have these blinders on, and maybe sometimes it goes the other way. But I think is it how important is that to maybe really not be quick to reject what someone's trying to tell us?
Yeah, true. I mean, you're going to get, a variety of opinions from a variety of people, and everybody's going to come at it from their own experiences and from their own perspective. So we want to kind of take that with a little bit of caution right there also. But if you're hearing from multiple people and they're asking you, are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you happy? Or that they're seeing a difference in you and they're asking about your relationship, um, kind of look at that a little bit more too, because other people tend to be able to see it sometimes easier than when we're in it ourselves. When we're in it, we are blind to it. You're absolutely right. We can't see as clearly because it's too close to us. Plus, we've been manipulated and led to believe and that this person or this friend or whoever is around us is, we want to see the good in them. So we start to believe that they are a good person, that they have our best intentions at heart, whereas other people aren't quite so I guess conditioned to see that or manipulated, so it's easier for them to see from an outside perspective. Just like if you were from an outside perspective looking in, you could see it much
Right.
easier. So we
Yeah.
kind of need each other. We need to kind of get some of that feedback.
Yeah. And okay. Oh, yes, I know where I was gonna go. I was like, "What was I going to ask?" But because I was paying attention to your answer. But I think before I go any farther in this discussion, it might be helpful actually. Because I think these terms do get thrown around a lot. Narcissism and narcissist. And uh, can you maybe just give some clear examples of what that type of behavior is like and how it does then, because we're all narcissistic to a point, but where it starts veering into being toxic.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So, and there in narcissistic personality disorder is a DSM diagnosis,
Mhm.
but it has become sort of like a shorthand in, I guess, just our communication in general, just society right now lately, for somebody that is manipulative or focused on themselves. So, I kind of like to use more like a broader term, like anyone along the dark triad, which means they could be on that cluster B or personality disorder. So it includes a lot more than just narcissistic personality disorder. There's borderline personality disorder, there's histrionic, there's sociopathic, and so really all of those kind of share some components, and it kind of goes back to there's four main things that they're looking for to support their weak sense of self or their ego. So they have a very protective ego because they have a very weak sense of self. And the four things that seem to overlap are that they need consistently either power, admiration, attention, or control, some variation of those four things. And with narcissistic personality disorder, it seems to be more heavily geared towards the need for admiration and attention. And as you go up, that spectrum, then the sociopathic or antisocial seems to be a little bit more based in control. So just to give you an idea, I mean, we do use narcissistic, or narcissist pretty loosely in today's language, but it really truly is a disorder, and there's a lot of markers that go along with that, that we do for assessments when we
Mm.
want to find that out or look closer.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that is important because I know I picked up a book a couple years ago about about I forget what it's even called, but something about narcissistic relationships, and because I was um, you know thinking, that possibly I might have been in one, but also even realizing that uh, I think actually I was raised by a mother who had a lot of these tendencies. But I like that you said, that it's really more than that, that it can be, these other issues about like control as opposed to just, admiration and things like that. Um, I want to also talk about a little bit. Let's because I know it's tough to be in this relationship, and so we want to be able to get healed. And I mentioned, as part of your bio, that you're certified in EMDR and trained in the expressive arts, which was something I have heard of EMDR. I have not heard of the expressive arts. So, I wonder if you could just explain a little bit about what these modalities are, if someone listening or watching doesn't know, and then how they can actually help to
Mhm.
heal.
Yeah. Okay. Well, EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So that's just really fancy way of of talking about how we get to how we activate the part of the brain through eye movement. And eye movement is, taken from I guess what happens in REM sleep. And in REM sleep, our eyes, go into rapid movement, and it seems to activate that part of the brain where the sensory inputs come in, and then they get marked with an emotional marker. So during REM sleep, our brains are like processing that and digesting that. They're getting rid of some of those um, sensory inputs and emotional markers that are paired together that aren't necessary because, we can't store every single thing. So it's digesting that as we sleep. And so what we're trying to do in EMDR is when these emotional inputs come in, I mean sensory inputs come in, and then they get paired with the emotional marker, and then that goes into like a neural network of other similar associations. But if they don't get processed the right way, or if they cause us to have these false beliefs because our protective system might have formulated that thinking that that's what we need, and it's very similar to any kind of training of any kind of animal, because our bodies are pretty much like animals. I mean, we're gonna, our bodies, our nervous systems are constantly at work to try to protect us. Do we go towards it or do we go away from it? So it gets these emotional markers, and then, puts it in a neural network of other associations so that we know when other similar sensories come in, we know what to do and how to navigate that. But if it gets faulty programming because we're, for example, you said, maybe raised with a parent, a caregiver who does these manipulative tactics. So our world is, set up, the map of our world is set up with that. And um, when those programs are faulty, like I have to stay out of the way, or I have to be quiet, or I'm not allowed to be angry, or I'm not allowed to be upset, or I'm wrong all the time, or whatever the protective system has put in place. In EMDR, what we try to do is we try to go in and really reprogram that. And these faulty cognitions is what we call them. They come up when a similar sensory input comes in, and it causes us to go into sort of like a low key fight, flight, or freeze or fawn mode. And it doesn't serve us at all if we're, if our navigating system or nervous system is telling us that we're a bad person and that we shouldn't be getting angry or upset, then we're not going to respond in our best interest. So we in EMDR, what we try to do is we try to train the nervous system to calm down, and we do that through what's called resourcing. And then we start to activate some of these memories once we've got a little better at training our nervous system at calming down. Then we start trying to activate some of these memories or these cognitions, and we go into the body. Where are we feeling that in the body? And we we try to pair it with a new cognition, like I am worthy. I do have a right to my feelings. I do
Mhm.
have a right to be upset.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. And I was because I was going to ask you if you could provide examples, so that was perfect. So yeah, and again, I love how you are tapping into our own innate, um, capabilities and working with, the brain and using what we have, but because our brains can be rewired. I mean, and that's the great thing that I know this is really excellent at helping with. Now, I want to then go into this expressive arts because that's
Mm.
I I love anything with art, and that always kind of tweaks my ear, and expressing. So what exactly is that, and how do you use that?
So that activates the same part of the brain,
Mm,
which is, it's really, the amygdala, and that's the creative processing. Um, and I guess that's where all of this stuff happens. It's deep down in the amygdala. It's not going to be in our language center. So expressive arts gets closer to that also. And that could really be, I mean, that could be anything. It could be, drawing or painting or moving or singing or, um, you know, any way, any form of creative expression. So like an example would be, with an expressive arts activity would be first, just like in EMDR, when we do resourcing, we're trying to calm the nervous system down. So the equivalent of that, or something, not really the equivalent, but something that's like that in expressive arts where we're training ourselves to be calm, would be to draw like a safe place or a good memory, something that's going to bring the brain to that place, bring our sensory system to that place. We draw it out because we have to think of the details of it. We can, any of the sensory associations with that, the way it looked, the way it smelled, the way it sounded, it starts bringing all of that into play. That's just one example. And then, processing it would be maybe, working through some more of the memories, um, either, good memories or bad memories. But so I guess the shorter answer would be that expressive arts activates that same part of the brain.
mm. One thing I would love for you to maybe help us out, especially our listeners or someone watching this today, is if they have been listening so far and starting to think, maybe I am in a toxic relationship, and maybe a romantic relationship in particular. We'll start there.
Mm.
What would you recommend that they do? What would be like maybe the first step to do before they make any drastic, moves, let's say, so would it be to, maybe, seek out someone like yourself?
I would say, yeah, for sure, seek outside resources in whatever way you can do that. And that means learning as much as you can about it. You know, Definitely start journaling right off the bat. Start logging everything, log your feelings, log what's happening, at that time, log anything and everything, the time and the date and what's being said to you. Because if you are in a manipulative relationship, a good chance is that you're being gaslit, meaning that your reality is being twisted. So you want to document things right away, because later on you're going to be told that didn't happen or that you're crazy. And I think the worst part about it is feeling like you don't know, feeling kind of crazy, feeling like you're dependent on this other person. So start right away. Just start documenting, start learning about it, start trying to become a little bit more independent of
Mm,
that person.
mm. Now, I so appreciate you doing that, especially the journaling part. That is something that I always say, advise people to do no matter what, advise my clients to do, because it's such a great way to be able to start, really connecting with, hang on, but make
Right.
making sure that you can keep track of what's going on. Now, Have you seen this in clients that maybe this also shows up in other areas, maybe in professional life where you wind up having a toxic relationship, and how do people handle that?
Yeah, that's a little more difficult. Actually, I don't know. I don't know which one's more difficult. They're both difficult. They're
Mm.
both difficult. But in a work environment, sometimes they are there for years and years. It depends on whether you are the employee or the employer, because either way, it's pretty bad. And it just seems like there's more covert ways to be um, toxic at work. It feels like they're going to try to rally people up against you. You're going to it's I get it. I guess it just depends, because I've had clients that are in toxic work environments where they're the employee and then their boss is very toxic and demanding, and they actually are a little bit more dependent on them, because one of the things with toxic people is they want to foster that sense of dependency. So if you're an employee of somebody that's toxic, you literally are kind of dependent on them. So it takes a little more strategic, I guess, exit strategy. And if you're the employer and then there's an employee, the dynamics are a little bit different, but they can do a lot of damage too. They're going to try to twist your reality. They're going to twist your other employees' reality. They can become very corruptive. So I guess it's just different for depending on which situation you're in.
Yeah, it's not fun either way, for sure. So, but it is good for people to be aware of this. Um, I'm going to shift back gears again to kind of deal with the healing part of it. From your experience, what's been maybe the most challenging part of the healing journey that actually has catches your clients off guard, and how can they prepare for it?
Oh man, the most challenging. It's hard to say. I think re- I don't know. It's hard to say. It looks like the more covert they are, the more covert the manipulation is, seems to be more challenging than, even though the outright, obvious abuse is challenging and it's completely damaging and wrong. It's easier to call that out. It's easier to spot it and see it and journal it and log about it, and then, kind of guard against it. But when it's covert and the I guess the person that's in the relationship is so twisted and so manipulated in their thought process, thinking that this person has their best interest at heart and they love them, and they feel like that's, you know, equal and balanced, and when in reality it's not. Sometimes it's really hard to get them to recognize it in order to even begin the process of building the boundaries that are necessary and getting them back to their own truest self.
Mm. Well, that's a perfect segue, because that was what I was going to ask you about next, is how can uh, people start building healthy boundaries, and since most of my audience is business owners, I believe anyway, how maybe we can start there, and then maybe go back to the personal side of it, because it may or may not be easier to establish healthy boundaries with clients or other employees. Um, what 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 types of boundaries can people start setting up to protect themselves?
You mean at work, in the workplace?
Yeah, let's say in the workplace first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, having very solid policies
Mhm.
and having checks and balances and having accountability, I think that's a good place to start documenting everything so that it doesn't turn into, he said, she said, or I never said that, or you promised me this, or, anything like that, or, you were told to do this. So having very clear policies and expectations, having very clear boundaries and agreements on what are the expectations what's the pay, what's the expectation, and just outline that as as much as you can.
Yeah. Now, in a personal relationship, how can one do that as well to start setting healthy boundaries, with a significant other, let's say.
That's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's not as formal as like a work policy or anything, but
Mhm.
the agreements can still be there, clarifying, what the expectations are on both sides. And if you're with somebody that is toxic and manipulative, that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge because they don't necessarily want to clarify those agreements. They like to leave it vague and keep you guessing. So that would be one thing, clear communication, very clear boundaries. Boundaries, it goes, all across the board. And really, I think you can kind of boil it all down to accountability. Like, are they taking accountability? Are you taking accountability? Because if everybody's taking accountability, then, everybody, you can work it out. You can
Mm.
always find a solution.
Yeah. And I think that is important for people to be able to know that there is hope. And I guess, but actually, well, maybe that is another question though. Um, if someone is in a relationship, have you found that they need to get out of the relationship, or is there a way? I don't know if that you necessarily do like couples counseling, but has there been opportunities for people to be able to, I guess, maybe heal themselves, and then that maybe helps to heal the relationship?
Yeah, it's hard because some people can't get out of the relationship for one reason or another. Like if
Right.
it's a child and their caregiver is the toxic one, they can't get out. Sometimes even in marriages, there's situations where people can't get out, they're financially dependent and or they have kids or I mean there's just a number of reasons. So the best option would be to get out because it's really hard to heal while you're in a toxic relationship. It's really hard to heal while somebody is manipulating your reality and twisting your reality. And you're, on a daily basis because you get sucked right back into it. So if you can take some time to yourself, if you can carve out some time, just get out, get away enough to get a different perspective on it, there's some chance for, healing and regaining your sense of self that way if you are stuck in it and you can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and but I know how it can feel really. You can feel really trapped, and again, I'm thinking back to my mom who, uh, had was married to my dad, and you know dealt with that, but then later she finally did get divorced and then wound up in another relationship with someone else who, yeah, it was kind of, different. This man wasn't an alcoholic, but I think it was also not the best, healthiest relationship. And she stayed with it because she just felt that she couldn't support herself on her own, even though she had. But, those are the stories we tell ourselves sometimes, isn't it?
Mm. I mean, and
Yeah.
sometimes it is true, sometimes, I mean, if you look past, and even, past generations, it was a little bit more difficult for women with children to support themselves. Even now, sometimes I see that, daycare, if they have young children, three or more children or whatever, it doesn't even have one, it doesn't matter. Daycare is expensive. And so sometimes they're just trading daycare for the income that they're earning. And
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's really hard for some of them to make ends meet. And I mean, have a
Mm.
a little bit of lenience on that. I feel bad for that situation. I mean, I've been there. It's hard.
Mhm.
But but nothing is more valuable than your health. So even if you are stuck in a situation like that, m- if you can carve some time out, hours at a time, not just few minutes here and there,
Right.
to get out and just regain your perspective, get out of that mind twisting manipulation game.
Yeah, absolutely. You owe it to yourself to
Mhm.
be able to give yourself that gift. I mean, that's like the ultimate self-care and an act of self-love, because you are, uh, caring enough about yourself to be able to, extricate yourself for a little while, because you really do. As we talked about earlier, that you need to get perspective, and when you're in the middle of it, it's too
Mhm.
hard, I think, to be able to do that. You've got to be able to get some distance, and really take some time to do that, and do all the things that you were talking about before. Find a book, or journal, find someone to talk to, and there's always support out there.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that I didn't touch on that you think is really important for folks to know with regards to, uh, either being in a relationship, in a toxic relationship, or recognizing it, or how to be able to heal from it?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot that goes into healing. So being patient with yourself, being compassionate with yourself is so important. I mean, I really can't overstate that. You have to have that self-compassion. When we get into toxic relationships, when someone is in a toxic relationship, we start to lose our own sense of self, because again, the toxic person, anybody along that dark triad, they need somebody, they need to feel like others are dependent on them. Their ego needs that. And so the person that's in the relationship with them loses their self. They start to lose pieces of them, of themselves, like their likes, their dislikes, their hobbies, their friends, their family, things that used to bring them joy. So, in taking time for yourself, it's also important to get back to the things that you once enjoyed, or the things that you might have let go, because you're going to start noticing that, like, oh, I used to have these friends, or I used to like to do this stuff, or I used to be good at that, and I just don't find that interesting or fun anymore. So, just push yourself a little bit and get back into that. Get your independence back. They don't want your independence. They're going to try to, deter you in any way that they can, because they want dependency, not independence. So that is pretty important. Use that self compassion to get yourself, independent again.
Yeah, I love that. That's wonderful advice. I think that is so important. Yeah, because you do need to get back into do things that bring you joy, and that used to. So journal about that. What were the things because I think sometimes, yeah, you forget. And it's like, well, what did I do when I was younger? What did I do before I was in this relationship?
Mhm.
And start getting some clarity around that. And I think that would help you then decide, oh, okay, well, maybe I can go take a cooking class, or whatever it is, something that is going to light you up, go spend some time in the garden, do something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would love to ask you this, because I do like to ask my guests this from time to time, because I'd love to see the answers. So, what are you curious about right now?
Hmm. I think I'm curious about just more, like, I'm starting to get curious about the spiritual component of healing. And I don't know how to define that yet, so I'm just exploring that a little bit. We kind of use phrases like higher self and or higher power. You hear that a lot in, support groups and things like that. And I'm just curious, like, what does that mean exactly? Are we, like Carl Jung suggested, are we all connected? Is there some part of ourselves that really holds wisdom, that we can possibly tap into once we get back to our truest self and quit relying on the ego so much, or the protective system, or fear? So I think that's where I'm, starting to focus now.
I love that. Well, That's right up my alley, and I definitely believe that. So, so I encourage you to continue on that journey and see what you learn. That would be great. Oh, I know. Yes. Hello. Duh. My other important question here: if someone would like to learn more about you and to perhaps get in touch with you and learn more about what you do, where is the best place for people to reach out?
Yeah, they can go to innersourcetherapy.com. There's a group of us. I have other clinicians that work with me, and we staff all the time. They're all, trained in this and educated in this. I think we've all kind of been through it. We do hold groups sometimes, which is really powerful too, because that helps to normalize it. We hold groups for people that have been in, that have grown up in toxic environments, and it's so amazing to see them, in the groups. It's like, wow, I didn't know. I thought, I didn't know. I thought I was the only one. I didn't know other people's moms acted like this, or other people's dads acted like this, or this is why I feel the way I do. And so
Mhm.
we have those groups. We have groups who are, for people who are in toxic relationships that are either struggling to get out or have just recently gotten out. So yeah.
Now, now, is this local to your community, or do you have anything online as well?
We do. I mean, we have online groups as well
Oh,
as
okay.
in-person
All right.
groups. Yeah.
All right. Good to know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, let's see. Is there anything else that I wanted to ask you out about? And now I'm trying to remember, but it's been really good, and I really do appreciate you. And I'm uh, yeah, really appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. And I know that I'm trusting that someone out there is hearing this and going, I need to take a look and see
Mhm.
what's really going on in my life, and am I experiencing joy or am I not? And so, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so much. So thank you very much for being with us today. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you about. I don't want to let you go without mentioning this, because I mentioned at the top of the show that I was on your podcast.
Mhm.
So can you just say a little bit about what the podcast is? I'll go ahead and let you plug it. So yeah, so people, it's another resource, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah, tune in to listen to, Healing from Toxic Abuse, and, by the way, I've gotten a lot of, feedback from the podcast that you were on, Grace, so
Mm.
thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, a lot of
good.
positive feedback, and, yeah, so if anybody wants to be a guest on my show, if you have a story to tell, or if you wanna just learn more, it's Healing from Toxic Abuse, and probably like your podcast, it's on Spotify and Apple and
All
Audible and
those,
all that stuff.
all those good places are awesome. Well, I will be sure and have that in the show notes, as well as the link to your website, so that people can check it out. And yeah, because it's it's good to be able to have a variety of resources. And again, and maybe you have a friend who you think might be involved. They may hear it better from listening to your podcast rather than hearing it from them. you
Mhm,
know what do
mhm.
you think?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool.
I do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and continue doing good work in the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. This was very enjoyable.
Oh, thank you. And I do want to thank all of you for listening and for watching today. And yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback. If you leave a comment on YouTube, certainly you can reach out to me at my website. And until next time, I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.